Welcome, Poggers, and everybody else, to another episode of the Divephoria State. This is an amalgamation of Euphoria.
It's actually no Euphoria.
No, actually, I'm just this garbage replacement for Daniel
Right,
Dracos.
so Euphoria doesn't exist. So can we call this the Dive State?
Yeah.
We're in a constant state of diving.
How about we just
like
call
the
it
LPL?
the Pog?
The Pog?
See, I was going to comment, he's got a name for his viewers of his podcast. We need to get a name for our dive viewers.
Wait, what do you call
He called them
The
poggers.
divers.
The divers.
The divers could work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he
What
looks
about you?
unconvinced. He's unconvinced.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
let's think of a name based off
We'll
workshop
Euphoria.
it,
I'm sure
His
that'll
eyes
go
were
well.
like, ooh, you're an
All right.
idiot.
For those viewers of the dive, if you could just like leave a comment and suggest what you'd like to be called, that would be great.
See, this is that you should have saved that to the end of the video because then you can see who the loyal fans are. And like, if you stuck to the end of the video, leave this comment.
Yeah, we don't want
Okay,
the riffraff.
Don't
inside.
leave a comment unless you stayed until the end of the video. Okay.
We'll know. We'll tell.
Well,
Yeah.
Flash, memory wipe.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome. We're going to talk about what's happened at the World Swiss stage.
Yeah,
And I guess a little bit of it is going to include some play-ins because we have some goodbyes to get to. But first, how's Korea been? You've been here for a little bit longer than last time, Vedius and Azael. Kobe, you weren't here for the first episode, which is probably nice because these guys got off a plane and then we're here. So how has it been now that you've been in Korea for a bit?
It's been good. I'm settling in pretty well. It's been really fun to just kind of be a part of Worlds again. I always find it really fun doing the international events and getting to work with all the different people from around the world. Like, it was cool casting with Hysterics, who I've listened to for a lot, but had never actually met or worked with or anything. So yeah, it's been good.
I love his energy.
Yeah.
He's super complimentary. He's one of the nicest people that I've ever met. So yeah, definitely.
It's very
definitely love
humble.
that.
You know, he seems like he feels very out of his depth. And I was like, wow, you're a very good caster, bro. You're doing a great job.
And he's been doing it forever. I think Hysterics started like a year or two after I did.
Yeah.
So like, there's pretty much been going for the same amount of time. So,
Also, I've got to say, Max,
Yeah.
you have to take us good places to eat because the food options have not been so hot
Here comes
around.
the pad thai.
Yeah, food options have not been so hot
I'm not
around
gonna
where
lie,
we
you are in not exactly the greatest place for
Well,
food.
and just the tough part is that the days are so long. By the time you get back, everything closes. All the restaurants that are kind of in our area, there's like a mall with 1 million restaurants. Those all seem to close around like 9 or something. And then even like delivery and everything stops at like 11. And we were getting back later than that a lot of days. So there's just like no food options.
So you have the wrong app.
But it's
because
the only
delivery
one that
doesn't
you don't,
stop.
But it's the only one
period.
that doesn't need a Korean phone number.
Yeah.
So that's the problem.
So are
You saying
yeah.
user
Wait.
error here? What's
Well,
going
hang
on?
on a second.
Skill
You're using
issue?
Shuttle?
No, I'm
Yeah.
saying like
That
it's-
still needed a Korean number for me.
Oh, well, it didn't for me.
I mean,
really?
it was fine because like my eSIM gives me a Korean number.
Oh, well, then you
But,
could use the good one.
you
mean
could
the
probably
Kupang?
use the good one.
And
Yeah,
you could
Kupang's
avoid-
the
Yeah,
way to
but
do it.
I tried, but all of those instructions are in Korean,
But-
and I was so overwhelmed.
Oh,
by
because
this
you have to
shit.
sign up for a Kupang account.
Yes,
I
which-
found that one quite difficult as
Yes.
well.
He only likes eating beans and toast anyway. So.
Okay,
You
I
just need a
enjoy
convenience
beans
store,
on
you'll be fine.
toast,
Yeah.
but I love bulgogi. I genuinely love bulgogi.
Well, there are a few options. There's actually a Michelin star.
There's pad thai you can order.
Michelin
Not
star
pad thai.
bulgogi?
Pad
No,
thai,
there's
man.
there's a Michelin. I think it's Michelin recommended. I don't think it's Michelin star.
Oh,
but
so it's
really
on the
good.
guide. It's just on the guide.
Yeah. It's a duck galbi restaurant, and it's really small, but it's so good that it's been recommended. The place is incredible, and it's right around the corner from you guys.
Does it
in
have
Youngstown.
chicken nuggets on it?
It definitely does not have chicken nuggets.
Okay, well, I'm just not
in
so
any
sure.
way.
Do they have
associated.
the surprise grape at the bottom?
Yeah.
You'd have to ask for that.
So I,
Wait, is that a cue for me to bring out my giant grapes?
yeah. So I ordered a pad thai. It came with quite the array of ingredients. There was corn. There was big chunks of fish.
Yeah.
There was like sashimied fish. There was tomatoes, entire cherry tomatoes. There was a grape under all the noodles at the bottom. And to top it all off, there was chicken nuggets on top.
I think they knew you're American and they're like,
I'm Canadian.
But- What's that?
Canadians hate chicken nuggets.
you're also American now, though.
Yeah.
Or you have a green card.
True, I do.
So-
yeah.
But what's a
Honorary.
traditional pad thai supposed to look like?
Not that.
No?
No, none
Yeah.
of those
Sounds like a
things.
Welsh pad thai to me. I'm just
Everybody's like, oh, this sounds good.
Yeah,
This is like, this is like
Guy
tradi-
doesn't appreciate
he
his
doesn't
chicken
appreciate.
nuggets.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. Man. I don't.
The janky Thai restaurant across the road from my apartment, like outside of Seoul, definitely is better than that.
Okay. Yeah, you have to take us to good
So,
places.
yeah, we'll have to bring you
That's
out.
a high bar.
Yeah, you got to see if you can beat the chicken nugget pad thai.
Yeah.
I'm actually really glad that you stayed where you were so that we could like make sure that the expectations are as low as possible. Because it'll be very easy to impress at this point in time.
All right, I love
so,
it.
like, what are you doing for dinner tonight?
Eating with you
Hell
somewhere
yeah.
delicious.
All right.
All right. Well,
now we've got dinner plans.
we can
Let's-
talk about our dead teams.
We can
Yeah.
talk about some
You and
dinner.
NA, both back on the airplane together.
Yep, thanks.
Yeah, yeah.
Wonderful.
Good job. Well done. We both sent one home.
I feel like I sent one home as well because you know
Did you?
Huh?
JJ
True.
Summit and
Yeah, the
Pyoshik, like,
LCK 5 seed
the
really didn't do
LCK
well.
5
Here we
seed.
go.
Yeah.
I was having this conversation with a friend, and I was like, "Yeah, I just want to accept them as the LCK 5th seed," and they're like, "No, you don't." And I was like, "Oh,
But you did after the T1 game.
Yeah, I did, and then
No take
slowly
backs.
but surely, things kind of went south.
Bro, so just the only funny thing about this, okay, because it was really sad, right? We all saw Pyoshik being really upset. We're all big Pyoshik fans, and so
Yeah.
that the end of
Look
that
how he's
was like
smiling
really
when he's talking about Pyoshik
No,
crying,
the
by
reason
the
why
way.
it's funny.
We all love Pyoshik. It was
because-
hilarious when he was
So-
crying.
He's
Did
a
you see his
sociopath, that's
heartbreak?
I was really unwell yesterday, so I watched the games from home, and I watched Kadrill's co-stream, and Kadrill made a tweet just like flaming NA, right? And then all of the replies were, "Why did you make Pyoshik cry?" And so he then just got bombarded with, "How could you do that to Pyoshik, man?" And then he
Oh
started
my
being like,
God.
"No, wait, I didn't do this." And then they even photoshopped this Ashley Kang interview where like he spoke to Ashley Kang and he was like, "Yeah, no, I was doing okay, but then after I went onto social media and saw Kadrill's tweet," and, it was-
Did they edit
it
the
was-
subtitles? 'Cause
No,
that
they
would've
just
been
did a
even better.
screenshot of like the the thumbnails that she
Yeah, yeah,
has,
yeah.
and she like the title of the video, and it's like a quote from Pyoshik.
Oh my
It was
God.
so funny. It was relentless. But yeah, on a sadder note, I think I mean he did play super well. I think that he I think he should be proud.
I like that he won his Kindred game because I think
Yeah.
Kindred's
Yeah.
just kind of trash right now. I saw that come in. I'm like, wow, that's not the victory lap that you want to go for, but it worked.
And it was one of the coolest Kindred games I've seen pro. Like, that's my most played champion all time. I love that champion. There's so many cool intricacies about how you can force the marks to spawn on certain camps and how you can manipulate it to actually like delay your kills to get marks. Like, he did basically all these little tricks in the game. There was multiple delayed kills to pick up the mark as it was spawning on them because you don't want an early mark to give away
Yep.
the gank. He, manipulated the marks to actually force spawn on the second scuttle instead of early taking it. Was able to. You're even able to limit the enemy camps that you can get a spawn on because if it can spawn like say like Raptors or Gromp, if you kill off Gromp, you can force spawn Raptors, and there's things like this that you can do. So it was really cool to see him do all these little tricks and then hard carry the game. And he had the classic getting the Baron stolen, doing the Pyoshik.
I was gonna say the most impressive mark trick was getting his teammates to delay killing the person.
I
Because
saw-
that's not even in your power. You just have to be yelling at them, "Don't kill him! Don't kill him yet! Don't kill him yet!"
Yeah, I was watching, like, I think it was around mid lane, and I was like, are they like trying to give the kill to someone who's definitely not going to be there in time? Like, I was so confused. But
Then
then
you
you
see
see
the
the little thing come
championship.
down, and you're like, I just wasn't in a Kindred mindset, you
He's
know?
got his teammates on leashes.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the most impressive part as a jungler.
And I honestly thought that TL were going to be able to win that series. Like, before going
Of
in
course.
there, I was pretty confident.
I mean,
So-
my favorite was Azael tweeted, "I've never cast an NA winning a series before," and then one of the first things he says is like, "NA is 10-1 against the VCS," and I was like, "What are you doing, man?" And I just
Oh,
heard him like,
God.
those death flags that you read. I just see them all slowly being raised after the first game. I'm like, Azael, surely not.
Oh, God.
Oh, God. You had fun casting, right? You had-
Yeah, it was grand old time. Thanks for being sick and having me
you're
sub in, Vedius. I guess I'm supposed to cast that. By the
Yeah, I
way.
was
Oh,
supposed to cast both
no.
those. Yeah.
I was gonna bring it up, and I was like, okay, whatever. Let it slide. You're really the reason that Team Liquid got
It's
eliminated.
my fault.
Yeah.
It's my fault.
And the reason BDS got eliminated as well, which is the other
True.
thing that we're
They
going to
weren't
say
there,
about.
My
Yeah.
blessing only works on G2. I don't know what to tell you. I've cast many Fnatic and Mad losing.
And is it more of a curse as well? Because you never seem to be all that big on G2, and then they go on to
Yeah,
win.
you hate caps.
Yeah.
Stop. Stop it.
So
I
weird.
spoke to his dad, and Cav's dad
Yeah.
was like, just make sure Vedius isn't anywhere near me.
Yeah, when we were at KBS Arena,
Yeah.
we saw G2, and Cap said hi, and then he walked away, and Vedius spit in his coffee.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Can you
I don't
believe
know.
it?
It was weird
It was
though,
really
as well.
messed up.
Because he didn't even say anything mean or anything like
Yeah.
that. Like it was like he was being pretty dignified, and Vedius was just being weird about it.
Yeah.
No, I remember.
Strange.
Done. You done?
I definitely missed something from the first podcast.
Yeah. But I think like Vedius woke up from the flight and had delicious food, and then decided that G2 were the worst team.
That's
that were going
nice.
to
Oh my
Worlds.
god.
I think that's what happened. before the
Propaganda.
He seems to be enjoying this a lot. I think he's,
Doesn't matter. We're gonna move. I'll accept. Whatever. They can flame me as much as they want. I'm just gonna sit back and enjoy when G2
Right.
wins the world championship, and they can all call Vedius an idiot for whatever opinions apparently I had.
And then you can just say that what you were doing was you were anti-cursing them so that they could win. And so it was thanks Vedius all along. If they get eliminated, you're screwed though. How about BDS? Because we're saying goodbye to them.
I mean, I think from a lot of the, I guess I can talk from the casters' perspective. We just wanted them to get through play-ins because Europe doesn't have a great history in play-ins. Fourth seeds anyway. Third seeds were pretty good. Fourth seeds not so much.
And it was a close thing.
It was close. Yeah, I genuinely thought that PSG was better than them, to be honest. So I thought that they were going to lose that series as well.
I think everyone did when they were down 0-2.
Yeah. So it was one of those things where, like, the fact that they came into Swiss stage, I think it's easy to forget that they're like a ton of rookies. Adam was the only veteran on that roster. Everyone else, this is their first time traveling for like Worlds, and I think that like they were frustrated, but it was also like, I mean, I shouldn't put words in their mouth because like it's not that they've gone out and said that we're fine, but
they too hate Caps.
it's no.
Yeah.
So annoying.
Feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah, fun. I don't even know what we're referencing.
I just really like that he's got the low-hanging fruit sitting in front of him as well. This is the best part.
Betty was on a campaign to tell us that Caps isn't good
Oh,
internationally.
I picked that up.
Yeah.
Not what I said.
Actually, it was. It literally was.
Yeah, it was
What I
actually
said.
what he said. Yeah,
It was
verbatim.
verbatim,
Yeah. We'll have it edited in.
Yeah.
You know.
We can have previously on the Pog
Yeah.
State. Yeah.
It's funny because I talked to Palafox a bunch, during scrims and stuff when they first came over here, and he famously, we already talked about him talking about Xiaohu is the best mid laner. He said
Oh
Caps
my
was the
God.
second best.
Are we
mid
talking
laner.
about Caps now? Or do you want to talk about BDS? Because I'll talk about Caps.
Yeah, no, we need to talk about BDS.
Finish
About
BDS.
BDS.
Finish BDS.
The only final point I had to say about BDS is that like they'll take the experience, they'll use it, and I don't know what will happen to the roster next year. I think there'll be a lot of changes to the EU rosters next year. But I can only hope that it makes them better. And it was nice seeing Adam's tweet where he talked about like he gave it his all, he did his best, he got to play against some of the best in the world, and he really got to see what he was capable of. And I think that for those players to recognize what the gap is between you and them, it's either eye-opening and motivating, or it's demoralizing and it breaks you. And it seemed to me like that a lot of these players from BDS were more motivated and excited than they were broken and beaten. So that's the best
Yeah.
positive you can take away.
I
a rough
love
run
it
as well.
so much, especially Adam's attitude.
Yeah.
From very early on, he was like, I am not going to change. We see this a bunch at international events, and he's like, I don't understand. Some players, they think it's fine. They're just going to, play the minimum, try not to lose too much. He stated early on, that will not be me. I will play my champions. I will play aggressively. Maybe I'll die. I don't care. And I fully love that, especially because we've had so much history, so much footage of teams doing the opposite and then slowly crumbling. So I just like that he went out playing his champions, pick that Olaf, get in there, give me a Volibear pick too, even though it didn't work out. Bonus points.
Oh, it's a bit sad that he had to like go out with Godvi though instead of Gods, because like that gave me some 2015 flashbacks
That's
that
an
I
old
did not
school
want.
reference.
I did not want that.
The last thing before we should move on, I want for the TL side. The only thing I will say is I was definitely sad to see how they came in versus how they went out, because the T1 series, or T1 I should say game, wasn't series, was so exciting for so many people and gave them so much hope. And from everything I've heard, and from the Rainover interview and Pioshik interview, Rainover talked about the team was having a lot of issues after they lost the energy, and it just felt like the players really looked past that matchup because they were feeling really confident going into T1, and then they almost beat them. And I think they kind of looked at energy as, well, this is going to be easy. It's just energy. We almost beat T1, so like this is going to be kind of a joke.
Yeah.
And then they got clapped by energy, and definitely, Rainover is alluding to the issues that they had and the problems that they were having after that match. It's like, well, clearly there was a lot of inner turmoil and a lot of issues going on, and there was a lot of rumors about that they were having a ton of problems going into the GAM series. So I kind of felt like, having heard some of that stuff, if they were to lose one game, though, they were probably going to lose the series, because if you're not in a good spot, mentally, and your team's already arguing, then that can be tough. And I feel like that was apparent. So that's the thing that feels the worst about the way TL exited. BDS, you guys said you were happy for them to just make it through play-ins, but I think the expectations got raised for TL after they had that really good first game.
Yeah.
And they were definitely favorites against GAM. They should have been able to beat GAM if they played to their level. Yeah. So it's definitely disappointing. And, it's a tough way to go out. Obviously, the rookies, I think, are getting a lot of flack, APA and Jan. APA obviously had some really bad games, but he also had some good moments too.
Especially in the first series. APA was the one that really impressed me the most against T1.
His Nico game was also really good. Mm-hmm. He had a few good ones, but...
He got bodied so hard by Palafox, though, and
he's got a mental block against that guy, right? Like, that must be the explanation.
The thing is, especially in team sports, if one person gets focused that hard, then it can cause like the other teammates to lose confidence, and that is the worst thing to happen, like that sort of collapse. So
especially if it's a mid laner.
From all these kind of like skirting around the subject, it seems like there was a big bullseye there.
Also, Pioshik even really specifically said, because Ashley Kang asked, why didn't you pick Lee Sin, in the first 3 picks in that final game? Because he said, after game 1, I could tell the rookies were really, really nervous, and I was planning to play supportive jungle style, but I realized, okay, I need to carry because people are nervous. They're not playing like themselves. And so he went to the Kindred and he said, why didn't you go for the Lee Sin then in game 3? And he said, well, we were worried about APA's champion pool. APA can play a lot of different stuff, but obviously there's a difference between being able to play a lot of different stuff and being confident in it on the world stage. So, maybe that's just Pioshik's point of view. Maybe that's the whole team's point of view. That's hard to say because it is just one man's opinion. But at least he said that's why they left his jungle pick till later and how he ended up on Sejuani. But, also to be fair to APA, he played less than half a split in LCS. Yeah. And then was different language. Literally everyone is speaking Korean on the team, and he's like the one English person, which is really funny for an LCS team. I'm not gonna lie, but I think his first foray into pro, it's pretty impressive.
No, I would 100% agree.
Yeah, I also just want to say as much like because they're getting so much flack from the community.
Yeah,
as much as fans are angry and disappointed, the team, to your point, is
way more
100 times more disappointed. We say this every time when they get eliminated, but especially for Team Liquid, they also had been gaining so much confidence internally because of the success that they started happening, and that's kind of why it hurts so much to see this kind of downfall. And they did not hit their own expectations, so
yeah,
definitely feel bad for them. Whereas, for the BDS side, it feels a little bit more uplifting because they did accomplish a lot of stepping stones. I feel like. Smashing Golden Guardians, then making it through play-ins. They have some positive things to look at, whereas TL didn't hit a lot of these positive notes first.
Plus, losing to DK feels expected, where losing to GAM is not expected, so it just feels way worse, right? Because it feels like, ooh, you got this good draw, you didn't make the most of it. You failed in that situation.
I mean, the Journey one is also just really resonant with me because BS had JDG.
Yeah,
which is a tough one, right? And then their early game was pretty good against JDG as well, but people's expectations were very low. And then they played against Mad.
I mean, that's the one that they had to win, right?
The Mad one.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but the expectations were it's funny. We'll get onto Mad later. I have a lot of opinions, but I think that many people kind of expected Mad to just smash them, just because they're so familiar with each other.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of expected, D+. I was cautiously optimistic. Maybe they could get a game, maybe. But, But I mean, obviously we're naturally going to look at it from a Western lens. Huge credit to GAM, of course. Yep. I was pleasantly surprised with how they played.
Word on the street was that GAM were having some internal struggles as well. The stories between the stories of TL and GAM were very similar going into that series.
Yeah.
As far as where their heads were at. And GAM, you saw the CEO was there and he was bouncing around like a maniac.
That guy is an actual Giga Chad.
Yeah. No, seriously.
He's a beast.
My wife looked at me when he was on screen. She's like, is that their personal trainer? And I was like, no, it's not. That's the he owns the company, you know, and like him,
She's like, oh, he also owns his own company.
and probably his own 3 gyms. Yeah.
Is your wife looking for a new boyfriend?
I hope not. I mean, I've been going to the gym too, babe. Like seriously.
So you got to practice your nod.
Yeah, I was like,
yeah.
It's all right. No, I've locked it down now, so
Yeah,
like
okay,
it's totally fine.
Just the time.
Yeah.
That was close. Yeah.
Right in the window. But I think that like with GAM, I think they rose to the occasion and TL crumbled under the pressure.
Yep.
And I think that like we need to look at the GAM story because it is really, really like really cool that they've managed to hold on. Although now it might just be over.
I mean, it might, but it might not, right? And I think one of the beautiful things about it, and I think it was a cool reminder, is the caster room that we like where our dressing room is right near some of the team rooms, and GAM was right near there, and you could hear them cheering and screaming and how excited they were and how much it meant to them. You could see it with the players on the stage. You could see it. You know, there was one of the interviews that was happening. The CEO ran in and is like hugging the player, and it's like that's beautiful, right? And that is competition. There's like, you know, the joy of victory and the agony of defeat. And you have to kind of appreciate that. Like, did I want TL to win? Of course, you know, these are players that I'm familiar with that I was cheering for. But it's also beautiful to see GAM do it. And I have no illusions that GAM was the better team. They fully deserved it. You know, we said that going into it, that whoever wins this, there's no excuses. It's not a best of one. There's no, you know, cheesing someone out. They outplayed them. I think they outdrafted them. They just played like a more complete team than TL, and they're deservedly moving forward.
And it was a very clear bar too, because Kiaya is by far the best top laner in VCS. Summit had our best laning stats of anyone in the entire LCS for top lane, and they outplayed them 3 times in a row topside with Levi and Kiaya up there. And
the parallels are
there's
actually
nothing
amazing.
left to say there. Like, you got absolutely outplayed at every turn here in, you know, repeat engages a lot of you know, on your choice. And so it feels really good for VCS, you know, and for those players, especially after Levi came to North America and like kind of wallowed in academy and then, you know, had to go back. It's such a strong, you know, return to the world stage where he made his name and got so famous.
Yeah, no, it's really, really cool. I actually see the teams as like the archetype of the team very similar, like one of the top-heavy teams that we don't necessarily have as much of here in Worlds. There's a lot of teams that revolve around mid lanes, right? Like you've got Chovy, Scout, like Knight, all of these players that are the epicenter of their team. Whereas I think that TL and GAM and even BDS, like with Adam, but like these are the teams, and then that one.
I knew you were gonna say it. I was in my head like, do I throw Caps in there just for the memes?
I thought you were just gonna say like, and Broken Blade's obviously the best player.
G2, one of those rare teams that seems to succeed even without a mid laner.
Yeah, it's actually it's very impressive. It's very.
I didn't want to throw it in again because I'm like, oh, I'm on cooldown. I did the last one. So your cooldown's up.
Yeah, he came back.
You're
up.
next.
Yeah, all right, I got it. But I do think that it's cool that like they both met with like a similar play style, and GAM just proved that they're able to compensate better for how, like they were able to play that style better than TL.
So shall we
built in a similar way?
Should we jump forward to the two?
I reckon we should.
Or do we want to touch on JDG, Gen.G at all before we jump forward?
Oh, I guess we could.
Well, I mean, the beauty of the format, right? So I didn't realize this, but it was insane when Law mentioned it in an interview. JDG and Gen.G get like a 10-day gap. Like they qualified on day 3, right? Because we played round 1 with 0-0, 1-0, 2-0, right? And then they now don't play again until quarterfinals.
And they don't play each other unless they get to the final.
Right.
Which is the best part.
Assuming our understanding of the quarterfinals is correct. Yeah. Which it should be.
I hope so. Wait, you're giving doubt now. I was completely sure of myself
right,
that they're on opposite sides of the bracket.
They should be, yeah.
They're on opposite sides.
I feel like this is the most well-structured tournament as far as tournament favorites, really with that path to meet at the very top that we ever have had. Very often, you know, people will be claiming
2018
in this tournament, you know, the real finals was this, or the real finals was that. But these are by far the 2 biggest tournament favorites from different regions. So it feels very kind of balanced. And you were even talking about how few upsets there have been until
there's been
yesterday.
There's literally this has felt like the most straightforward group stage of all time that I can remember, because we had what I consider to be 0 upsets in the BO1. Some people were getting at me and saying, oh, well, G2, what about G2? Well, I think G2 is good. So I didn't consider G2 beating the 4th seed from LPL and LCK an upset. I thought that was a pretty even match. So to me, that wasn't an upset. But if you want to argue that's upset, sure.
I mean, it was an upset if you go into the Weibo Gaming game and you're like there when they're 9,000 goal behind. I'd say that at that point it's an upset.
But expectations going in, right?
100%.
And
Pedro was upset.
Based on he was very upset. Based on that, there was, and within every regional match, the higher seed won every single time. Every inter-regional match, the team that I expected to win would win. The only exception being GAM versus TL. So that's the only upset that that's the only one that I would say has been an upset so far. So clearly, the kind of like regional seeding / strength has been correct thus far.
And there are advantages to JDG and Gen.G getting out with the 3-0 because then they get matched with what should be weaker teams theoretically.
The 6, 7, 8
that are going to have
here's
the
what I will
3-2s
say,
that barely got out.
Like, because we're talking about the format in general, right? When I look at the 2-1 group, right? Yeah, but like maybe we'll have a graphic that'll pop up.
No, it's not going to help.
I'll just run through.
There might be something edited.
I'll run through the 2-1, but like KT, LNG, right? T1, BLG, NRG, G2. These are all teams in my head that I'm like, I'm fine with them.
They could all win Worlds.
Yeah.
But
I agree. Good point, Vedius.
But like people will sit there and be like, oh, maybe it should have been. But like you look at the 4th seeds from LCK and LPL, and people will be like, well, they're stronger than the 1st seed from NA and the 1st seed from EU. And I'm like, well, okay, fine. If you want to sit there and debate that, that's okay. But all that means is that those teams, like the 4th seeds from LPL and LCK, should then win in the 1-2, and then the NRG and G2 should lose in the 2-1. Right?
I just love the
NRG and
G2 is
G2 are
already
playing
beaten
well, I know
both
they
of
are,
them.
but like I'm talking about like
That's why it was the Giga draw for G2, right?
Well, I agree. Yes. But it's one of those situations where in my head I'm like, these 2-1s and 1-2s, like they've worked out very nicely.
Yeah.
Considering when it felt like a lot of the things kind of felt unfair in a way at certain points, like certain teams had easier roads than others. The fact that the 2-1s and the 1-2s have ended. What did you see that someone did this really interesting? Where like they basically gave each of the teams a rank. Like they gave JDG 16, and then they like slowly went down based on like expected seeding, and they actually even put G2 at like underneath the 4th seeds from LPL and LCK. They were like, just arbitrarily, this is where I'm going to put them for now. G2 had the hardest route based on the equivalent rating.
So they
of
just
their
add up
opponents.
the numbers of the.
It's super fraudulent though, because it's basically saying that like it's if you're saying the total strength, right? So JDG obviously beating BDS is easier.
Yes.
Gen.G beating GAM is easier, but there's also the reality of both BLG and T1 are much harder opponents than anyone G2 beat. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, so why does it matter if it's like the total points thing doesn't mean anything, right? Because you wouldn't get to the 2-0 match potentially if you had to play.
Yeah, but the
BLG
argument,
or T1.
but the argument is that the current routes that teams have taken, some have taken easier routes than others to get to the 2-0. That like the G2 took an arguably easy route to get to 2-0 compared to other teams. When I would argue that LNG had an easier route to 2-0 when they had to play both Fnatic and C9.
Yeah,
I don't think
LNG
G2's path has been
definitely.
easy at all.
And like I think it's also fair to say that like certain, like I think it was KT have had a horrible path.
Yeah.
I was
right?
kind of thinking of it in terms of at the time, what were the possible draws that they could have gotten?
That's fair.
And it seemed like I was like, oh man, they could have gotten some way more difficult.
I mean,
draws.
they definitely could have. I completely.
They don't
agree
have.
with that.
They definitely don't have the easiest. I mean, I think both EU and NA have gotten exceptionally good draws.
Whenever we get each other.
We exactly, because that's the reality. Is we both got GAM, and we've gotten a lot of EU and NA. So dodging Eastern teams is just like that's just easier, right? On
Someone
average.
was telling me about NRG's route. NRG played
NRG
against
beat
Weibo,
Mad
and then TL,
TL.
and then Mad.
Yep.
And then if they beat G2, they will have qualified beating
Only Western teams.
only Western
Western
teams.
teams,
And if they lose and then draw someone like a Fnatic, there's a world where they could
still qualify.
yeah.
Energy had an incredibly easy route. C9 had pretty hard. T1 and LNG, like that's a pretty hard path. Energy, I would say, had really easy. TL, I would say, had actually really easy after their first one because their next two was another Western
But going
team,
down
and
to
then-
0-1 is really rough. So like
It
their
is, it
initial
is.
draw kind of
But you got a Western team and the only like non-Eastern, non-major region team. So I would still argue like I think
they did
NA
get a
had-
Western team that recently beat them.
Yeah, sure.
So that's
sure.
not great.
But it's still, who would you rather play? We're talking about overall strength. Who would you rather play? Energy or KT?
Yeah.
Or DK? Or you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
right? So it's like I think objectively NA has had really good draws. I think EU objectively has had really good draws. I think beating both DK and Weibo was super impressive from G2, but that's the kind of level that I put them on. But I still think you have to say in the 2-1 group, this is super lucky draw for G2 because I think G2 are heavily favored over Energy. I expect them to clap Energy, honestly. And I would say, I don't know what your expectations are, Vedi, but to me, there's 5 draws they could have gotten. I would have expected G2 to lose to the other 4.
I disagree with that.
I disagree with that as well, and I actually think that this is a bad draw for G2 purely because they'll probably clap NRG and people will be saying, oh, it was so easy for them to get in, when I don't think they deserve that at all. I think they should have knocked out one of the other 4
but
teams.
If you win,
because
I mean,
I
so
think they
it's
can.
one of those
if you
things
win
where,
here,
like,
you dodge JDG and Gen.G.
the only
so
thing-
it's super beneficial for knockouts.
The only thing for
Because if you think you'll beat those other teams, then they're gonna make semis.
how much more do you want to talk about
play.
format? Because like I can talk about G2 if you want,
Yeah.
but that to me is like a bigger topic. Where if you want to stick on the format for a little bit longer, I think we should do that.
I'm pretty bored of format.
Okay, well then, so G2
Not
then,
gonna lie.
like, in my opinion, the teams that I would be the most concerned about them getting in this would be T1 BLG. KT and LNG, I think they'd beat both of them.
I think they could definitely beat KT.
I think
KT doesn't have the stability to
So
handle
my
G2, I don't
current
I think
opinion-
G2 could beat any of those teams, but I would still favor any of those 4 teams
But
over
why?
G2.
What about G2 makes them look worse than a KT, LNG, T1 BLG?
I mean, just the games that they've played here. They've been pretty inconsistent. They've had Baron throws in
Whoa,
both
they've
the
been
games.
very consistent, actually.
I mean, I think they've shown a lot of problems both in their Weibo game and in their DK game, right? And then
But what
against-
problems?
What problems?
What?
I mean, against Weibo, they got completely blown
The
out.
initial 9,000
they
gold
shouldn't-
gap was probably a problem.
Yeah,
No, but like-
they
It's an
had
indicator.
Yeah.
they have no objective control on
But
bot side. They
their
got
early game
Hans
was
Sama has
either
shown
even or
huge
heads.
champion pool problems, right?
Champion pool problems.
I mean,
Whoa,
what happened against JDG or excuse me against Gen.G, right? Like they ban out both Callista and Draven, and he plays Ezreal into Lucian. Like to me, that's super concerning. That all the Asian teams are just going to copy this.
I felt
So-
like the drafter. Sorry,
No, you can
just
go.
a quick interject. I felt like that could have been a team decision to be like, hey, we're gonna go into this, giving them Zaya Rakan and utilize these specific strategies for counterpicking. So I don't know if I put that all on Hansama and maybe
Sure,
that's
but I found
team-wide
it
decision.
concerning because I feel like coming out of that, everyone was going to try to replicate that. I don't think Energy is good enough to punish them, so I don't think it matters. But again, like I think G2 could beat any of those other teams, but I would still favor all of them above them.
So
People
think
are
the-
like
the-
way too down on LNG. I think, for example,
My-
like people are like LNG looks bad. We want to draw LNG. LNG still took a game off JDG. I still think people are just
Well-
because they're not as like aggressive and dominant. People are super underrating them.
If you think JDG is the best team at the tournament, then you've got
Which
to
I
put
do.
LNG very close to second. Like, if not just second.
I think they're third still. That was my evaluation at the start.
Yeah,
I just think
Gen.G,
people
LNG,
are,
I think that makes sense.
people are just down on them because they weren't dominant.
I'll talk about LNG in a second. Because for G2, in my opinion, their early games have been good or neutral. They've been playing well in how they actually build early leads and how they lane. Their issue has always come around how they play around that first Baron, in the fact that, in my opinion, what they do is they like to use Baron as a way to either force TPs or to force a fight, right? And they do it early because they feel that they should play around their first spikes as quickly as possible because they like to draft strong winning bot lane 2v2s. The problem is, and I think this has happened twice now, the first time they were indecisive about whether or not they wanted to finish the Baron or turn and fight. And the second Baron, they were again indecisive around whether or not they wanted to finish the Baron or turn and fight. And credit to Weibo, they held their TP so long before actually committing to fighting for the Baron that I felt like G2 ended stuck in this situation where they now we either take a bad fight or we flip the Baron. And then in both instances, they've been able to come back into the game and then win through either incredibly good team fighting, smart macro decisions, or just like finding really good picks. And a huge shout out to Mickey, like MVP of G2 in my opinion. Like his Rakan was instrumental
He's been
in
a
like
beast.
finding a pick.
Yeah.
Like his Renata was also insanely good. The series against Gen.G, I think that I agree with you that like there are draft issues, but I don't think the bot lane was the problem. I don't think like I know for a fact that the champions they walked away with out of their scrims were Kalista, Draven, Lucian, and they have another one that they have prepped that they haven't shown yet.
It's got to be Ziggs.
But like Lucian is something that they have had incredibly good scrim records on. So the reason why it comes out, it's one of those like, I think that's a bit of like a hindsight thing where it's like, oh, well, it looks bad because it didn't work out. But that's something that from their perspective, they've practiced a lot. They know can be good and they believe it to be good. The Ezreal, I don't know what the decision-making behind that was. And I don't think their drafts were particularly good against Gen.G. But in my opinion, I think that Gen.G just like has a much more flexible draft pool. I was surprised by how many options they actually had and the way in which they like handled G2 in the draft. And then they're also just like,
I know what
they're just a much better team.
Yeah, Gen.G, they picked Rakan, and then it doesn't matter. That's the Gen.G way to
I
go.
guess it's a little bit a matter of philosophy because a lot of people critiquing G2 kind of look at it as G2 are creating their own problems and then solving them.
Yeah.
So how much credit do you give them for solving a problem that you first created?
You don't know the problems that they've solved elsewhere, though. This is the thing, like, because I just want to defend G2 about that draft just a little bit because I liked that they went in with the Lissandra answer. Because
I actually think that game 1 draft was fun.
Yeah, I thought
have issue with that game 1.
I thought that was cool, but like the fact that they're contesting, like trying to make sure that they've got the Rakan pick covered, because as soon as they prove that they can do that, they can win the series. Yeah, right. Like they can show Gen.G that they don't need to worry about that pick, and then they have initiative in the draft.
Yeah.
They just didn't manage to actually do that. Like the plans to deal with the Rakan just didn't work.
Gen.G, the only thing I think you could maybe argue is a little bit surprising is like mid lane picks, but besides that, it was like the most standard meta picks, right? They did Xayah Rakan and then Jax Aatrox top lane, and it was Rel, and what was the other one for Peanut?
But I think that there are certain things that like EU isn't used to like this high prio on Jax, which I think surprised them a lot, and they don't have a good answer for the Jax either. I don't think.
There's no way you should be surprised by Jax priority. That is, if they watched a single game of LCK or LPL.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that they're not used to having Jax being like early rotated and just being blind picked. This is not something that I think a lot of EU teams are used to.
Yeah, there's also just play issues that are not purely theoretical or champion pool here. I mean, when you look at the Barons and they're going to the back of the Baron pit to kind of set themselves up for a giant AoE.
I mean, I agree.
Spiky spike.
Then yeah.
And
they talked about themselves in the interviews afterwards. This is a team that gets so excited when they're playing League of Legends that sometimes they lose their way, especially in these early high pressure Baron calls.
And I mean, I give G2 a lot of credit for being able to come back in those games, after having made mistakes, and that's why I put them on the level of those teams, right? Because I do think they're really good. To me, that is like a big compliment to say you're on the level of those teams. But I just think that those, like both Weibo and DK, to me, I thought were a step below the other Asian teams, and I felt like against those other Asian teams, if you make those similar mistakes, I don't think you get to come back.
Sure, and I think that's fair. But then my question would be like, what does KT do that you think makes them going into a G2 matchup stronger than a G2 would be, that KT would be titled favorites? Because I wouldn't come in with a clear favorite in mind if G2 was to play against KT. And I agree with you on the LNG point that if it was G2 LNG, I would put LNG as the favorites. I think that is fair.
I would agree G2 would be the favorite against KT.
But I don't know if I would be confident enough to say that. Oh, I see what you are. I see. That's clever. But like, I guess to me, like KT hasn't shown anything in particular that super impresses me about this group. Like, I think that the way in which they played against BO, like their D+ game was very one-sided. I think that they really struggle to close out their games. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to flame KT right now because
go for it, please. We love it. No, that's what we want.
The Weibo game got messy, but it's like they beat the same people as G2, right? And I thought that they played a really good game against BLG. I just thought BLG played an exceptional game.
I have G2 very high purely because of how many times I've been repeated how good they have been doing in scrims.
How high?
Like, I would put them as decent chance to beat everybody except BLG in that group.
I mean, that's what I said. They could beat them all, but I would put the others as favorites. So you're saying G2 are favored against everyone except BLG?
No, I think very good chance. Like, I would put it closer to 50-50.
Yeah, that's what I meant as well. I don't think you ever say
I'm just saying like 60-40, right? Yeah. Like I would give I would give 60-40 or thereabouts, right? Like G2 could definitely beat those teams, but I'm favoring them, right? So it's like, again, like this, I don't want it to be made out like I'm like G2 can't win. I think G2 are a really good team. I think they could win, but I think that this is like, I would if I had to bet, I would bet all those other teams would be more likely to win.
Completely reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree.
But it's like, as far as KT, I think BDD has been playing amazing. I think this team is flexible. I think that they do team fight really well. I think they've had sloppy games too. Like, they're not a perfect team by any means, but I do think I actually personally felt like their best game was probably their game against BLG. I just think BLG is also exceptional.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of players have been looking lackluster on the Kaisa, but aiming,
Yeah, he's pretty good
still
at that.
got
champion.
it. So that could be a huge advantage if Zaya becomes permabanned moving forward.
I think.
And Cuz is super underrated, I think, as well. I think
That's
Cuz
a
is
bigger thing.
And Cuz has been incredible this year, especially
he was so
because
good
we've
this year.
seen him on the world stage before, and it's been like, I mean, the very very famous disappointment was that Longzhu team, right? And Cuz was a factor there. Like, and he spent time on T1, and you go to T1 as a jungler, you're a punching bag. That's basically how that one goes. So
Keen
Cuz
also
has
had
been
a
through the
great year.
ringer.
BDD had
Yeah.
a great year. Like, I think this is a
and
good
Keen
team.
sort of escaped from purgatory and like gets to KT, and all of these players are all reinvigorated after what were difficult years last year as well. So the KT story is really really beautiful. Especially BDD had the worst time ever on Nongshim. Like, that roster, they shelled out so much money for this team that just didn't click. It just didn't work.
I think it's kind of unfair that they get a lot of extra hate because of the All Pro thing and them getting every single
that's
role
fair.
All Pro. But that's not their fault.
They
you
played
know?
really well.
Yeah.
They were really good.
But that invites so much memery and criticism. That
yeah,
It's true.
they lost a lot.
I was
a couple
curious,
of
like,
best of fives
if
that
you
they
guys
should've.
thought, because Azael's comment kind of made me think that when I look at the 2-1 teams, BLG have looked the cleanest. Do you think it's fair?
I think BLG have maybe been, I don't know.
Because it's hard to
I
say
just
because
feel
both
like-
BLG and LNG lost to JDG, right? Which is kind of like it. But so in my head, I was sitting there thinking to like, in this group, I guess like if you really wanted to, you could find like poor performances or like criticisms for each of them, while also each of them having like really strong performances. So I was like, that's why I think that this group is super interesting, just because it's hard for me to fully assess like, oh, what version of these teams, especially after a small break, right? Because now they actually get a few days to prep. How will they look? But I was, my assessment initially, and maybe it's wrong, but that BLG kind of come into this group is like, would I rate BLG the highest
I
in this
would.
group of six?
I for sure would, but
I think you guys are
still-
underrating LNG.
Yeah, I think I'm LNG. just
LNG
because
looked
they,
way better against JDG
and they
than
went
BLG
3
did.
games against JDG. And
Well, it's
like,
only
that's
one game
very
versus 3,
different.
right?
It is, but like BLG got kind of pretty clapped in
I
that
just
game.
I just feel like it's so easy to fall under the spell of like Bin's star power, and he's been an absolute demon. Meanwhile, Scout doesn't get as much credit.
No, do you know what I've seen?
Okay,
about
but doesn't he?
Scout
I feel like
is
everyone
he
rates
built
Scout
the
really
wrong
highly,
items.
doesn't he?
He built
It's
the
like-
wrong items on Ari. He's terrible. That's what I saw
Yeah, I
because
thi-
like he had the
First-
game on his shoulders in that last JDG match, and everyone's like, "Well, he built Zonya's second, so that team sucks." I'm like, "What?"
I think it's what you said was true coming into the tournament, but now I think at the tournament, everyone is singing Scout's praises all the time.
Because
Yeah,
the first
right.
2 days, first 2 days of his year,
Yeah.
he was literally the best performing player of the whole tournament.
Pre-tournament, there probably wasn't as much talk about him outside of people who watch the LPL a lot because there's just bigger names. I feel like it's weird to say that, but I do think people talk way more about Chovy, about Knight, about Faker. These guys. Even Caps, obviously from a Western point of view. But I don't think people are underrating him now for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a few like world champion MVPs that are here at this tournament. Scout is one of them, and we have to remember that.
true.
It's
Like
just-
we've been singing Canyon's praises, understandably, but I like Kingan's not here, unfortunately, so we don't get him from last year. But Scout definitely is
mean,
up there.
Scrim data is also kind of influences it, and a couple of different NA teams have had like reported pretty good, at least single instances of good scrims versus
LPL.
LNG specifically too.
Mhm.
And so that perception kind of influences it, but I always get drawn into scrim stuff, and very rarely, if ever, even plays out like that. And there's always a question of like, how serious is your particular opponent even taking the scrim, and how hard are they really trying?
I heard a lot of teams in the lead up to Swiss saying that they were beating LPL and getting clapped by LCK, and then LPL came out and just was winning everything.
Yeah.
About your earlier comment, where like you feel LNG is being underrated.
Yeah.
My personal bias is towards BLG, only because I feel like that they just
Swagger.
Well, it's not just like it's just that when they start the game, I feel like that they're way more proactive than LNG is.
They are.
Yeah,
my
LNG
opinion.
is the slow
My
LPL team.
opinion on LNG is that they're a very reactive team. I was genuinely so impressed with how they played against Fnatic. Like the thing that like really blew my mind was there's this control ward in the bot river that Razuk is just clearing, and he gets killed for it. And he doesn't just get killed, he gets collapsed on by 3 members almost instantly. And the way in which LNG do that, it's not just a one-off, it happens all the time.
They punish mistakes like that.
And like it's insane how aware they are. It's like their eyes are always on the minimap, you know? And like that to me is what makes LNG an incredible team. But then in my head, the problem is like, well, then you're reliant on the opponent to do something for you to then be proactive on the map, or
but
for
they
you to
set
actually gain
traps.
control.
Like they set traps and they put you in those situations.
And they
LNG
play
are
around objectives
really,
heavily.
and they're really, really good at making sure that there's no good place for you to go.
And I don't disagree with that. My opinion just leans more towards the BLG style of play.
It's way more sexy. It's just
Well,
looks good.
I mean,
It
I
just
guess
is.
it
It's not wrong.
It just is.
But I just feel like that from
turns you on,
start to
doesn't it?
finish,
Yeah.
BLG is just way more dominant. And like
Ben
they're-
Cassante.
yeah, I don't know. I guess like, but I think it's fair to say that they're both very, very similar in power. I guess my bias puts BLG above LNG for me.
Here's the thing. I just think that more proactive teams have been kind of dominating for a while now. But watching LNG, it's not a 1-to-1, but it kind of takes me back to the old era, you know, pre site zone and jungle changes and all this sort of stuff, where it was teams that would play more slowly. You'd play against T1, right? And T1, you'd go in there and maybe you'd even be in a kill lead, right? And you'd be like, okay, our team's doing pretty well. We're winning some skirmishes. But every time you get a kill, you look at the minimap and they're taking a tower. Every time you get a kill, you look up, they just took the dragon. They just invaded your jungle. They just warded up around Bear. You know, like they always were doing something. And that's how I look at LNG. And I think LNG is so smart about when and where they take fights, right?
100%, yeah.
And you will never draw this team. Well, I shouldn't say never, but they are very difficult to draw into bad fights. They play around their timings, around their item spikes, and they're so patient. You know, if they're going to play a comp that they think is outscaling, if they have Scout on Azael and they have, you know, like hyper carries across the map, they're going to play for their items, and you're not going to make them fight you, right?
100%.
And so I think that it's like, it looks less impressive, but they don't make a tremendous amount of mistakes, and they do punish them really, really heavily.
Well, I still think it's impressive. Just
It
because
is.
like it is, and
I think visually it doesn't look
Okay,
as,
that's-
you know what I
it's
mean?
not as sexy.
It's not
It's
as
not as
sexy.
sexy.
Yeah.
Sure,
It's
sure.
it's just
Fair
true.
enough.
But it's just funny because I see so many people like on social media and stuff are like, oh God, I really wish we got LNG. We should have got LNG. I wanted LNG, you know? And it's like
that for me is so much. Oh, you're talking about fans, not players,
fans.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fans.
Okay.
Yeah.
'Cause
And
I was like, that's
fans.
a lot of scrims.
fans.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
scrims too, yeah, I know. But it's just interesting because I just think they're getting looked past because they don't just come out and just punch you in the mouth and blast you in the game, right? So,
That's fair.
but I think this
I think
team
that-
is really good.
No, they are 100%.
The other thing about LNG is the fact that I don't think that there's a clear avenue of attack into LNG. I do think that there are some players on BLG that haven't necessarily been performing. I think On's had a bit of an off start to the tournament.
All right, pass them the banana.
Yeah, I mean,
pass that.
that's my second pun, and I'm not gonna do any more. I promise. That's a empty promise, because it'll be accidental. But I think On's looked a little bit iffy. I think Yagao is always there as a target, and I think that sometimes he uses that to his advantage.
goat?
I think that like BLG have like some ways for you to try and get them, but I think that LNG are much tidier, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think they keep their doors shut.
I think it's a lot of credit to Tarzan. Tarzan does so many little things. You're talking about kind of manicuring the rift into this situation where your opponents only have bad choices to take. Tarzan does so much prep, so much setup for this team. I feel like him and Scout are huge credit for
He
that.
brought a team with sword on it to an LCK final. Okay.
So, how do we rate T1 then?
Oh, no
Because
idea.
in my opinion, I don't know. Like, based on the games I've seen, because game 1 versus TL wasn't good.
Looked super beatable.
Right, they looked very beatable. Game 2 against Gen.G,
Clapped.
like, I mean, to be fair, they were winning up until they lost, right? But
I don't think so.
Well, no,
Not even.
I never thought they were winning that one.
because
No.
the comp, like,
Yeah, the draft, they were winning up until like the end of the loading
but
screen.
that's my no.
100%, yeah.
I felt like in the early
It
game
was
they
just
got
like
all these really
C9.
good
We were doing
skirmishes.
so well.
Why did we have
We're
to
the same.
load onto the rim?
Yeah.
But then yeah, they very one-sided game against C9. So Tier 1 is a super difficult team because it wouldn't surprise me if against BLG they just look like a completely different team in the best of 3.
But that's also just, wasn't that kind of just them in the LCK? I felt like, right?
Yeah.
Like they just have these horrible performances at times, right? And
Yeah.
it's like you could just say, hey, they just had a bad game against this, and that's why it looked that way. So it's tough to know, right? And it's the reason that KT chose them in playoffs,
Yeah,
right? It's like
100%,
this
right.
team, and everyone memes on,
And they were like-
KT
they were-
for
they
it,
were
but they
fifth.
looked so bad. Exactly, they
Yeah,
looked so bad during
yeah.
the regular season. It wasn't a bad choice. I'm not making
No,
not
no,
firing
no,
shots
no,
at
no,
KT.
I'm
But
just
it's just
saying,
like
I'm
KT
agreeing
made a
with you.
fair choice, and then a different T1 showed up on the day. Kind of is how it felt.
And then
to me.
KT were obliterated for it. Next time,
Yeah.
even if they think
Well,
it's the
wasn't it
right
still-
choice, they're not going
It
to
was
do
back
it.
to back 5 games, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Still.
back to back to back all year.
Yeah.
Just 5 games between the two. Didn't matter.
It's gonna be really funny if they both lose and draw each other.
I mean, it could happen.
I mean, I think T1, definitely has their things that you can kind of attack and you can look towards. There's obviously all the memes about like, oh, if you kill Faker in the side lane, you lose the game because they're taking something else, right? But TL actually attacked him in the side lane pretty well, I felt like, and it's maybe it's just kind of there's a few that are sticking in my mind, but it has felt as though when that has been happening here, they haven't been getting something elsewhere. Like Faker has maybe been more approachable or more attackable. In LCK finals, he was also in LCK in general in playoffs. It felt like he was more up and down. Like he'd have some like really good engages on Nico's, and then he'd have some really bad ones. It felt like when he was off Azir in LCK playoffs, I thought he looked a lot less
I
consistent.
mean, he only really played Azir and Nico, but
Yeah.
I think that like Faker is now, when it comes to players that have utilized time outside of their league, I think Faker's benefited a lot, right? Because he had to come in because Poby was there towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
And he almost, it almost felt to me like he came back a little bit too early, but they needed him to, otherwise they weren't going to make it to Worlds, you know?
Yeah.
Like if they played with Poby, it would have been an absolute disaster. So like Faker has to come back, and now it feels a lot more like he's been revitalized, given the time off, and more therapy and more help for his hand. So I think that like T1 has leveled up from what the expectations were in the LCK, but I still think that there are a lot of things that are still very T1 about this team. It's still the same roster, and we saw what happened when Faker wasn't there. The amount that they rely on this guy. And if he's just dying in side lanes on Orianna to Akali's and things like this, and they're not taking other things on the map, that shows that he's frustrated. That shows that T1 doesn't have the same level of plan that they
What was the
are known
score
for.
MSI? Was it 3-1 BLG?
I don't think it
Let me
was.
look it up.
It was not one that I really wanted to remember that much, so I assume something like that makes sense.
Because I remember
pull it
BLG
up.
made the lower gauntlet run, right? They beat Gen.G, then they beat 2-1,
Hmm.
and then they went on to face JDG.
I mean, I know that BLG has an insane record against LCK teams. They basically, I think they're, it was something like 8-1, 10-1, something like that against LCK this year.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They're just like, they've been winning basically all their
They're
games.
LCK kryptonite because they're like, you can't plan for anything that they do. They're like the opposite of LNG. We'd be fine against LNG. Like KT's probably psyched about the fact that they've.
You mean that
Okay,
you're really nervous about KT versus
so-
LNG?
Well,
Versus T1, it
I'm
was
nervous because I'm
3-1.
confident.
They 3-0 Gen.G, then they 3-1 T1. Who else? When else did they play?
the 3-0 into Gen.G is what really blew my mind. in that
Yeah, I
tournament.
mean, no one was expecting that, right?
No.
I also remember all of us were like, of all the teams to get, like BLG was the one you want, like G2, Mad, C9, like we'll take a BLG, please. And then we did not want a BLG at all.
No.
Yeah, they were super good.
Yeah,
super
so that was
incredible.
6-1, and then they beat KT, so that's 7-1, and then they didn't play another. So 7-1, and then I don't know if there was there. I'm totally spacing out on the MSI. Was there like BO1s before that they played them in or anything like that?
They played
I
in
don't know
the
who they
play-ins,
played.
Did they play an LCK
but there was
team in
no
play-ins?
LCK team. in the
Okay, so then it
play-ins.
would have been just so it's 7-1 then would be
Yeah.
the record for the year so far. But they've been incredibly good. I mean, I definitely favor BLG over T1 personally. I mean, I am more high on LPL than I am on LCK. maybe that's just kind of my biases, but I felt a little bit that way coming in because I thought LPL had 3 teams that if you had told me that they won Worlds, I wouldn't have been shocked. But with LCK, I found it harder to believe past Gen.G. But T1 always seems to kind of hit that next level internationally. So like it's hard to know, are they really
until the final? Yeah.
Well, I mean, they still went 5
get
games.
there.
They still went
Yeah,
5
yeah.
games in the final.
Yeah, game 5 in the final. You're like, you're not putting big money on that one.
Yeah.
Let's just say that.
It is more like concentrated, the hope in LCK because of Gen.G.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Gen.G are an absolute titan right now.
Yeah,
with
they
how
look really good.
confident Chovy is playing.
And the
kind
fact
of,
that Doran
And
looks
LCK
good.
felt less close,
Yeah.
right? Compared to LPL, where it's like
Oh,
10 games LNG
when it comes to that
JDG
final. But I
and
think
stuff.
that's a lot to do with the LNG JDG matchup. I think that
Yeah.
like those two, like Gen.G, I think you could almost say are like somewhat up towards JDG's level, but they haven't had the same kind of competition that JDG had. Because even BLG, like some of those matches, you never know what's going to happen in a match against BLG. So like you were saying, like that top 3, they have all different archetypes as well. Like they're like all very, like you can see clearly the different ways that BLG, JDG, and LNG win the game. And it's about which one of those works better for Worlds. And they've got all their bases covered. But I do think JDG is a better team than the others.
The one thing I guess I will say is that BLG was fairly competitive. With LNG as well. So it's like everyone talks about BLG obviously just loses to JDG every time. But like LNG is the more competitive team because they played between the BO3 and the 2 BO5s, 13 games, went the maximum 13.
Yeah.
But BLG, obviously they did lose in playoffs, but then in the regular season, they 2-0'd them in LPL summer. And then in spring they played and it was a 2-1. So it's like they've been kind of more back and forth, right? So that's why I kind of see it as those like 3 teams that are all fairly competitive with each other. But obviously at the end of the day, and then Weibo's there too.
Yeah, let's adjudicate that one, shall we?
Should we start pushing into specific match stuff because we do have 30 minutes left? Unfortunately, we have a meeting.
Yeah.
So how do you guys want to handle this? Do you guys want to talk?
Well, I just want to quickly know
specific
how you guys
matches?
feel about NRG. Do you want a quick hit? Just tell me how
Sure.
you feel.
I mean, I am. Energy or
let's do it. We'll go down the line and just get some theoretical teams that we're going to put into the brackets, right? So we'll eliminate some teams and we'll promote some teams. We'll have the conversation when we get to that and
we wanna
try
talk
and work
about the
out
most
what
contentious ones?
what the next one's going to be. The contentious ones, yeah, because like we can just KT LNG. Anyone got a coin?
Yeah, this one's a really difficult one for me.
Yeah.
I think I'm favoring LNG.
I'm
Let's put
favoring
LNG.
LNG.
There we go.
predict-
Perfect.
I would predict.
I've got a black pen and I'm going to
Only
write
'cause,
on a
like, I
black
just-
box.
To
That's
me,
not
I
gonna
need to
help.
rewatch all of KT's games, but like my head right now tells me that KT have been struggling to close their games out and they've been like dropping the ball a little bit here and there, whereas I trust a little bit LNG more to be cleaner in their execution. Once they get the lead, they tend not to let go.
Yeah, I would agree.
So that kind of surface level, again, I'll rewatch and have a stronger opinion, but that's where I'm at with KT LNG.
Where are you guys with T1 BLG?
I'm on BLG.
BLG, I think.
Me too.
I mean,
But I think
I wouldn't be
KTLNG could go
surprised.
either way.
I would not be surprised if T1.
I
looks
would
like
be
a different
surprised
team.
if T1 beat BLG.
Really?
I would be surprised.
Okay.
I feel pretty strong on the LNG side of it, actually, for the KT one. I just feel like Tarzan is the guy to expose because you have those worries
I'm
about.
pretty sure he has.
Yeah, that's why I feel like he's the guy to
Matchup.
expose
Yeah.
cuz so or like that's going to be such a huge leverage point because like we've been saying that's one of the big dominoes how LNG set up their clear rift where they have this clear path to the end game. So yeah, I feel strongly about actually the first 2 LNG, then BLG, then the last one I am extremely nervous for Energy. G2R huge favorites because specifically when talking to them, talking about their scrims, I know I keep repeating the scrim thing, but Fox was very, very impressed with Caps, not memeing on any of the previous Cap stuff. And
Unlike Vedius.
and
Yeah.
G2, I felt like part of, people were really disappointed with their match versus Gen.G, but I feel like they were just cooking so hard they kind of got carried away with themselves. And versus Energy, I think they're just gonna come in with so much confidence. I'm extremely scared, but this is the non-rational gamers, so I'm putting all my eggs in that basket. They're actually, very upbeat, and you were talking about how the morale on BDS was still so high, and they're having fun. Energy are in. I mean,
they're
stage.
2-1. They should be having fun.
They're in that stage though, and they, Palfox gave the quote talking about how, keep sending the same old teams. Now we got new people that are gonna, try different things and be confident. And I just want to see them go out there kind of in that spirit of BDS and like play their own style, fully embrace it. Have Dokla and Palfox both play some carries, do some weird, crazy stuff. And
see what happens.
And Contracts has been really good. He has wanted to be at Worlds so much since the Cloud9 days. He has worked so hard. What is it, 6 years?
6 years.
6 years working to get back here. So I'm very excited to watch this match. G2 are for sure coming in
for a qualification match. It's really high.
Yeah.
G2 are for sure coming in heavy favorites, but I am
and he's been shitting on us, so I'd like that to change.
I mean, I think this is on paper easily the most one-sided matchup of the three. I think G2 are massive favorites, but I mean, I'm excited for Energy. Absolutely. I want, for the same reasons.
We get two best of threes anyway, even if they lose.
We're gonna go out guns blazing for sure.
And
if we do.
This is a total random aside, but it was cool when Energy played TL. That was the first time two NA mid laners have played against each other at Worlds since Epic Gamers versus TSM.
I was there.
I think season 1 of Worlds.
It was season 1.
That's the first time
that
two
was
NA
the
mid
Din
laners
brothers facing off against one another, right? Like
it was Reggie
was Dan and
versus
Reggie.
someone else.
Well, I mean, they were on the team. Dan is jungler, but
I know, but they were still faced. That's
Oh.
pretty cool.
Yeah. So that is kind of cool, even just in and of
That
itself.
was Salsi, wasn't it?
Saucy,
Mid?
West Rice was on that
And
team.
then-
Dyrus, yeah.
Dyrus was on TSM. No, he
No,
wasn't.
he was
He was
on
on
Epic
Epic Gamer.
Gamers.
That,
Yeah.
my god,
He was originally Epic
So-
Games.
what a time to be alive.
Super old school, but either way, I'm happy that Palfox is performing well. I'm excited for this matchup. It's like if there were to be a way that they would win, I think it would have to be some kind of craziness, right?
He has huge respect for Caps. I just
G2 has been gigabopping people in scrims. Those are the rumors, right? Is that they're doing super well,
and
in scrims.
they've already shown that
They're on a high tier.
Yeah, they're looking real good.
And losing to Gen.G didn't really change my opinion of them because Gen.G is Gen.G.
I think a lot of teams would lose to Gen.G.
Yeah.
That's why they went 3-0.
I hope we do some Senna bottom lane type of stuff for Energy.
That was a really cool, really smart draft actually. When they played against TL, that was super smart. I thought
they played
a lot of
Senna
confidence.
TK clapped them.
I was like, this is perfect.
Have they played much Senna Lee Sin?
Bot lane?
I just need Lee Sin to be flexed. I need Lee Sin to be flexed. That's something that T1 have been into in the past.
People were cooking on some Senna lanes for a while in NA. There was people were doing Senna Cho, Senna TK, Senna Mundo for a while.
I mean, Ignar is the Fervor Leona, so
I mean, I know he was. I mean, he was on a barbecue chicken branded team, so. He's definitely the guy to do it.
But do we want to bounce down the one?
Yeah, let's do C9 versus Fnatic because I think there's going to be some conversations about this one as well.
This one I think is really close, and I think it's really exciting because of that. I would maybe slightly favor C9, but I think this one could honestly go either way. I think Fnatic's definitely favored in top lane. I don't think Fudge has been playing that great, and Oscar I think did show some really good laning phases at times. He's been more up and down too. I think that's kind of one of Fnatic's issues. Against BLG, I thought he looked pretty darn good. It was against GAM, the GAM one, that he got solo killed twice. So that one was obviously less good. But we did see that Kiaya is just he's just
good.
I don't remember that game.
He's a beast because he was. They were beating Summit obviously as a joint thing, but they played around topside incredibly well, both against Summit and against Fnatic. I mean, Humanoid I feel has definitely impressed me less this tournament. Humanoid I think internationally in the past had kind of had those more memorable moments for me. I don't feel like he's had any kind of really big step up moments in this event so far. His Akali game against BLG, I got really excited early because he kind of had that sick outplay and he gets a kill, and then they had that other skirmish. He got I think another kill, or maybe it was a kill and assist. I can't remember exactly, but he was in a position where I was like, oh, he's gonna do something, and then the rest of the game he just did nothing the entire game. So it's that's something that I think Fnatic is going to kind of need.
I do think the GAM game, he was the one that made me think, even with all this craziness, oh, they've got it in the bag, because every crazy play, top or bottom, Humanoid would be getting money, either turret plates mid, or he was the one who picked up the extra kills on the bottom, like overdive from GAM.
Yeah.
Of course, that's, one game, but he kind of, I don't know about you watching it, Vedius, how nervous you were. But I kind of felt like Humanoid in that one was the blanket. I'm like, he's on his ear, he's getting a bunch of the extra money. So even though the team gold was pretty close, with Fnatic having a lot of it on him, that made me feel like, okay.
And that one was only close for what, 10 minutes or 15 maybe?
Yeah.
It
never gave you the
really
feeling like it was
early.
close,
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
After the bottom between two towers dive from GAM, where he got the extra gold, I think that's where it broke away.
I mean, the games I pay more attention to are the LNG games and the BLG games, just because Fnatic have maybe it's unfair to say this, they're not the most respectful team. They're a team that generally, like, when they see an opponent that they don't think they have to try hard to is against, they're less motivated. They're the type of players that, like, get more motivated the stronger their opponents are. Which is when they played against LNG, I felt like that they lost after they forced that top dive, and then they didn't get to do anything else. And then against BLG, that comp made me sad because, like, it was their early game, the things that they did was actually pretty good. Like, they made a lot of, like, good decisions, and I think that they also picked good fights. They just didn't have the damage. There was that mid play where, like, Elk got really low, and then the support got really low, and then jungle got really low, and then mid got really low, and then they died. And then I was like, that's so annoying. And so it's Fnatic, I think, still largely lives or dies to the success of Razork in the early game. I think that their ability to team fight is fine, but it's very clearly weaker than what we've seen from the LPL teams. The question is, do I think that C9 is a team that can exploit Razork's aggressiveness in the early game? And do I also think that C9 is a team that has better objective setup and team fighting than Fnatic do?
I mean, I definitely think they have a better bot lane. And I think that Blabber's played better than Razork.
I actually think
I mean,
C9
C9
are kind of
LNG
put together pretty
way
well to
closer.
deal with
Like,
Fnatic.
Fnatic was 5k down at 19 minutes against LNG.
Again,
They got
I stand by the
turbo-clapped
fact
by
that,
LNG.
like, this is one of those situations though where Razork felt forced to do something top, and then the second that failed, then the game was over. Whereas C9 didn't do any play like that, so it then kind of like looked even. They even got the Baron, and then they lost in mid, right?
I have to actually step out for this particular matchup because I'm biased.
Yeah.
Because my barber is Berserker's cousin.
I forgot that. Yeah.
So he's basically family. So I'm sorry, guys.
Well, that's 3 votes for C9. So
The bond of the haircut
Yeah,
is unbreakable, truly thicker than blood.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
So-
been 5
Well, look
years.
at this hair.
understand.
Look at
We
this
understand.
hair.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would be fair to say, based on the games that we have seen,
C9s look better.
you could rate C9 higher. My opinion, having cast Fnatic
So
all year,
That
is
T1
that
game is we're just
Well, the T1 game they got
We're
blasted,
just
but
like-
Fnatic got super blasted by both LNG
Yeah.
and BLG. And
well, they
looked
didn't get
better
blasted by
against
BLG.
LNG, 'cause
That's
they
not
both
fair.
fought against
They did not
LNG.
get
Who
blasted
looked
by
better?
BLG.
C9 looked way better against LNG.
There you go.
we got
Um,
super blasted by the T1.
We got super blasted by T1, and we blasted Mad.
But my opinion is that
That one wasn't close.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to make the decision for you guys, bias aside, because we're sending NRG, right, to this bracket here.
The 2-2.
Yeah, so let's send a European team as well.
Yeah, I guess
So
they didn't
we
get
can
blasted by
we can have
BLG.
both.
That's not fair to say. Yeah, that game was close for a while.
Because my opinion is, having cast Fnatic all year, that we have not seen yet how, like, full strength Fnatic. That's my take. Like, I think it's fair if you want to come in and rate C9 as higher. I think that we have seen better stuff from C9 at this tournament so far. My regional bias and my regional expertise, I guess you can quote, which says that I think that Fnatic can show more, and there's no reason why they can't beat C9.
I said the exact same thing for Cloud9.
Yeah.
You have not seen their Final Four.
Yeah.
My biggest question, though, is, like, what do you think about their bot lane? Because to me, it's like, I was so concerned from TL because I didn't feel like Jan was showing anything at the event. And I just feel like this whole meta is just 5v5. Sure hope your bot laner is good, right? And, like, Noah and Trimby have not super impressed me. Noah didn't super impress me throughout the LEC. He hasn't super impressed me here. Like,
Have you seen
are
his
you
social media?
concerned?
Because that's impressive.
True. Are you concerned about Fnatic's bot lane, or, like, how do you rate them?
I think that Trimby was one of our best engaged supports in the league. And I
Ooh.
think that
Alistar re-engage versus BLG, where he goes into range.
The WQ flash was really
where he goes. But I mean, I'm actually pointing out a mistake one that I think was a bad turn. It's the one where Elk gets chunked really low, the Tristana, and he Alistar re-engages, so he's in range.
Is that under the mid tier one?
He's in range of Tristana damage, but his damage is like that.
Yeah,
that re-engage
bad.
is not coordinated with the team.
Yeah.
So he puts himself, even though he hits a combo, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get this Sejuani. You guys can hit, right?" He's putting himself in range to get hit while not having his DPS in range to hit.
This is why I say like they normally play better than that. And so it's
The flash headbutt though, that was good.
The bot lane engage was sick.
he W'd onto a minion, right, and then
Yeah,
flash.
he taxied the minion and
taxi.
then Q flash.
Yeah.
Taxi Q flashes are the
The
best.
Trimby
I don't know, man. It's I think that Fnatic have had a rough.
How do you feel
line.
about Noah though? That's what I want to really know.
I mean, like I think that during the regular season he was actually very good. When they went 7-2, he was one of our best AD carries domestically.
So you were feeling very good, but what about now?
You're dancing around with Vedius. Give me your evaluation of the bot lane against Cloud9. That's what I'm asking you.
I mean,
I
Noah
think
wasn't
that they're-
terrible in the LCK.
I think they're
as a rookie.
fine.
He was actually.
love-
That's not an answer.
I love these answers. He went even further back.
He's like, well, in the regular season, how are they going to do it in Cloud9? Well, the thing is,
Fine.
Trimby's pretty
He was
good.
a beautiful baby. I mean, did you see those
I mean,
baby
I
pictures?
He makes a
I remember
really great
when
cup of coffee.
Noah-
and what you have
When we
to
think
say
back to the
is-
Bible, it was Noah that saved the animal.
He has
So
a
wait,
great art.
wait, but-
I love his art.
Oh, so that means that he's going to get 2 wins though, because things have to come two by two,
two
right?
By two, yes.
So it'll be
Right.
2
So
wins
there
and
we
then
are.
2 losses, and then they'll leave the tournament.
I don't know. Like,
guess.
my issues aren't specifically with Noah. I can't say that like I've paid super close attention to Noah. Like, I think it's fair if.
But you watched him all year. You don't have an opinion on him?
I mean, yeah, I think he's fine.
Their recent games looked rough. I'm gonna give you the answer. Their recent games, he looked pretty rough.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt. It's just similar, like Jan. He just didn't feel like he had any impact on the games, right? And I think that in this meta, I think it's really hard to succeed if your bot laner is not a big part of your wins.
It's hard for me to rate them when I feel like that their 2 losses versus BLG and LNG were things that like, if he was the best AD carry in the tournament, I don't think the outcome of those games change. Is kind of my opinion. I don't think that he was ever in a position that like would have changed those outcomes. So I guess like that's why Razork is a much bigger focus for me, because Razork's early game is ultimately what decides whether or not Fnatic can win.
One example for me was when they were playing against BLG. I felt like in some of the team fights he was so scared to do damage.
Fair.
Like
yeah.
he's playing
He gets
Kaisa
nervous.
and
He
he's
gets
just
super
not
nervous.
using his ult. And there was one fight around mid lane, if I recall correctly, where Elk got down to, I want to say 10%, maybe it was 20%, but like really low health. And Noah had lots of farm, had completed items, and he sat on his ult the entire fight, never went in. And to me, it's like when you play in that way, again, it's just very reminiscent of how Jan's playing it, where you're just kind of hitting what's there, you're trying to play it safe. And it's just so hard to win, I think, like that. You know, when I think about all the teams that I believe could go far in this tournament and can do damage in their tournament, it's because I've seen their ADs really step up and play at that really high level.
That's fair.
And I just don't know if I've seen that from Noah. So that's kind of like my biggest concern, because I believe that Humanoid can obviously win mid. I believe that Oscar and can win top. I favor Blabber, but I think Razork, when he has his good games, is obviously really, really good. I just have very little faith in Noah compared to Berserker. Maybe it won't matter, but that's why I would predict C9.
That's fair enough.
I've already written.
I mean,
them
like
down.
in the finals, he gets nervous. Like he's been very open, and you see him like he's the player that you'll see shake on stage, and like they always give him a big prep talk, and in the comms, like Trimby's always been great at this, but Trimby's always like good job, or like don't worry about it. He's always trying to keep his spirits up, but he's definitely a player that gets nervous. He's no stranger to that. The question is like, is he going to get nervous against C9? Which
It's an elimination match at Worlds.
But he treats the way he played against Mad Lions, like Kazi was one of our best performing AD carries, and he like really stepped up in that series. Not every game, obviously, but he has the potential to. When he's on, he's on.
I wonder whether Noah and Berserker actually faced against each other in Challenger. I think they were
I don't
there
know. I
at
don't know
pretty
if they were
similar times.
I think he was KT.
Yeah, KTT1 would have been the matchup.
My
But Berserker went
Chronicler
through
would
quite
know
a few
that.
different teams. Yeah, I think Chronicler probably was casting it back when it was happening, but that was a bit before my Challenger time.
But I would fully understand the logic of the C9 prediction. And if I was on a desk, I would agree with the C9 prediction. My bias will put my Fnatic one down, though. So I'm not going to be afraid. I'm being very...
You're correct, but I disagree.
Yeah, you are correct, but I will predict Fnatic because I am EU biased.
Right. Well, they're probably not going to win, I guess, according to the panel, right?
Yeah. I mean, this one though, because relatively, it's a lot closer.
Yeah,
but
this one is.
I think it is a lot closer.
I think this one is.
This
You know what
is
the other two are? Not close.
Come on. I'm waiting to wake up one morning and Mad will surprise me. You know, like every day I wake up and I'm like, today's the day. Because at some point, everybody has
They've
that
already
story.
surprised. They
No,
beat.
That's what
God.
I've thought
wait,
for
no,
8
they
years
didn't.
about
I
NA
know.
winning an international
Yeah,
best up with me casting at Vedius.
Yeah.
I'm like, today's the day. I'm just gonna wake up.
It's like
I'm
at
gonna
some
go
point,
into my job, and I'm gonna.
someday,
I
something
feel like
has to happen.
you came
you
in
know?
with the opposite. I feel like you came in like, oh shit. It
Nope,
makes it
today's the day.
even more worried.
Today.
Just walking into work, you know.
I'm just.
That's what I do every day.
I want.
KT's playing.
So
It's exactly how I'm
the
feeling.
main reason why I want Mad to win this series is because I want Cadril to be upset. So there's a personal vendetta in there.
I mean, all
but-
of
It would also be much better for Mad's chances at Worlds.
But imagine the narrative where Mad can smash domestic teams, can smash an LPL team, but can't beat NA.
I would love
Suck
it.
as we're the goats.
I would love it because it would mean that Mad are
Circle
still
of
in.
working
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Mad can give us more wins.
Yeah.
I think this is the best arc.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mad's got to beat Weibo so Cloud9 can get them in the 2-2 match.
Exactly.
I
we
mean,
need this,
God.
Vedius. Or
I would like
energy.
to
We're gonna have
dilute
two
the
teams
pool.
there.
Yeah.
So we're all agreed. We're putting Mad through.
You're putting
Yeah.
Mad
All right, I'm
through
down.
right
I'm,
at the-
I'm changing.
Yeah,
it.
Mad
I'm
gets
changing
through
it.
easy.
Yeah.
Oh God.
The Shy,
Mad.
who's that? Never heard of him.
All right.
I
So-
feel so bad for the players, bless them. They're really nice people. They are good players, but internationally, that org is just not it, man.
like that's the problem because like everyone on that team I really like individually, and then you see the amount of hate that Mad gets as an org. It's so
But also-
so sad.
I talked about this on the analyst desk. I think it's so unfair that how much flack they get. They clapped BDS. BDS went
wasn't
out
even close.
0-3,
Yeah.
and people like, good job, BDS. We love you. You are so good.
It makes
You
sense,
looked
though.
great.
It's
Yeah.
all because of the rivalry with NA.
I know,
So
but
it completely makes sense. It's totally unfair.
It's totally
Yeah.
unfair.
and
And so much of this isn't
You
even
need
to
to
do with
accept-
any of the players that were on the Mad roster that did all the initial disappointing.
Yeah.
You know? So, like, it's all just connected based
mean,
on the org, and it's
This,
not
this team
really
has won
related.
3 out of the last 6 LEC championships. It's
Right.
time to accept it is one of your best teams.
They are.
Yeah.
This is just...
But that's why it's infuriating.
Yeah.
Because like in the past, when we had G2 and Fnatic, we could always trust them to do something.
Yeah.
And so when Fnatic fell down and then Mad and Rose rogue, people were like, that's cool, we'll believe in the new generation, and then they just didn't do it. Right. And like it's I for a long time I was a big like Mad sympathizer where I was like, guys, you know, they went 4-5 games against D+, they made it out of groups at Worlds, like they can be better, you know, like just believe. And then they just didn't deliver. They lost in
Yeah.
play-ins, and then I'm like, what? There's only
It's
so
just
much.
the level of international competition is so high when you have to go against absolute titans, you know, from the LCS. It's just, I mean,
But
you
also,
can't blame them.
It's
Finish
so
strong, finish
frustrating.
strong. Hold it together.
Guys, I was screaming at that Elder Dragon. I couldn't believe they just left that mid wave. I was so angry. The fact that like you knew that they had 2 TPs up. They didn't even try to contest the mid wave.
It's a
and they
League of
didn't even
Legends
use it. They just
equivalent
walked.
of
They
a crossover
walked
and
to
the guy breaks his
Nexus.
ankles.
I was so upset watching Mad.
But I think they were checkmated.
Yeah, they for
I
sure
mean,
were.
maybe
They
Yeah,
lost
but
lost
also-
2 inhibs. If you defend
Also
your
because
base, you lose
Energy
the Elder, and then
ended
they walk.
multiple games that way in the LCS. So I was
But
like,
the
oh,
Baron, that Baron, where they like just leave Talia or Kai'Sa to solo the dragon, and the rest of you go and contest. You had 4 people alive, and you just did the Baron like it was nothing. And I was like, what are we doing?
It's okay, Vedius. It's okay, Vedius. It's okay, Vedius. Yeah, please. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
It's all over.
I was.
All right, so I just want to say that I've put Mad down as winning because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really fun because then we get
Good job.
It's
Thank you.
actually just
I appreciate that.
yeah. No, you're welcome. You're welcome. So now we get hopefully there's one draw that I'm going to be okay with. And that is if we just get LCK versus the West as the final round of best of 3s. Because it could be KT, T1, and DK facing off against C9 Energy.
No. See,
and Mad.
here's the thing: is I want LCK versus LCK.
Yeah.
And then Mad versus LA can sacrifice Mad.
Here's the NA cope draw, right? Is that
Yeah.
Energy loses G2. Okay, you got us there. You got us. Fair
Sure.
enough. But Cloud9 beats Fnatic. And then we have Cloud9 Energy.
And you're just guaranteed a spot. Easy.
Or,
Tony wants-
but not as easy as Mad.
I was gonna
That's
say,
why
don't
Mad
you
has
want
to come
C9
through.
Mad? Yeah.
Yeah, if Mad wins.
Imagine, wait, but
That's
hang on a
why I'm
second.
Mad's biggest
that
fan
means
against
that
Weibo.
C9, there's a world, right, where C9, if they got that draw, could qualify by only beating
Western
or am I-
teams.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then the same for NRG.
Same for
NRG is
Energy.
the same,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, T1 could qualify from only beating NA teams even specifically.
yeah, because
Yeah.
Oh my
Most of the
God,
teams
true.
easily.
That's
because T1.
And
That's so
if
funny.
they
T1
do that,
beats
we
C9.
for sure just give them the LCS trophy, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Faker
The
becomes
most-
an honorary LCS.
Because their only
player
wins
citizen.
are
He
TL
doesn't
and
have very
C9.
many
the
trophies,
most
so I
Mad
think he'd really
Lions
like
thing
that,
to do would
He's never
actually
won
be
LCS.
No, never.
It's-
the most
I
Mad
saw
thing
that
would be
comment.
Fnatic beat C9 and then Mad draw Fnatic and they beat Fnatic. That would be the most Mad thing. And then
Oh,
they get
God.
3-0
Yeah,
in the quarterfinals. And that-
They just clearly prove they're
They
better
just-
than the other
Yeah,
EU
they just-
teams.
And then EU's just sitting there, you know, like that guy at a baseball game that's just
Yeah,
stood
yeah.
there, like looking. And
Actually, here, this is even better. We're gonna go one further. Energy beat G2. They make it into the stage.
No!
Mad
Stop
beats
it. Stop
Weibo.
willing it
Mad
to
beats
existence.
Weibo, and then Mad draws G2 and beats
Oh,
G2,
God.
and then draws Energy and gets 3-0'd.
Holy crap. That goes too deep.
That's actual like regicide. Like,
Yeah.
killing the kings of Europe.
Yeah.
They would be the most hated org in history. Like, it wouldn't
They
be
already
close.
are, man.
No, I mean, like, I'm trying to think if there was another example.
Nope.
Probably isn't.
No.
One of a kind.
People were really upset with Alliance, admittedly. They were really upset with the Kaboom.
Yeah. Carsey's a brave man though. After I think it was actually after they lost to NA again, he tweeted EU versus NA, and all the comments are just EU fans just roasting him. You're not EU anymore. You're trash. Retire. You know, you deserve to be kicked. Paycheck steal. You know, just like going crazy. And
I
then,
hope he's just like, yeah, but look at those interactions,
and
man.
then
Nailing it.
and then he followed it up with. Every year, everyone else, we always get the impossible bracket, and all the EU teams draw noobs or something like that. Just, you know, just as flavors of noobs.
Oh my
respect,
God,
I'm
he's
just
so
like, respect. You
Yeah.
know, like Godspeed, Carsey. Don't read the comments.
Yeah,
That's
like-
when you just have
you
to
just-
fire.
You just mute. You
tweet
just tweet.
No, not even. That's not enough. You have to delete the app.
Yeah, yeah.
After you tweet it. You
It
can't
might
read
actually bleed out through the
Yeah.
app into your
There's
other app.
too many angry
That's so
tweets.
funny.
Your phone starts overheating.
Yeah, your Gmail is now just covered in these little X's. You're like, oh crap, what's happening? Oh, that's perfect.
Respect, man.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I think we've gotten to the end of what our theoretical bracket looks like.
Yeah, we got
and
4
it
minutes.
Looks kind of hilarious.
Looks good to me.
To be
Yeah.
perfectly honest.
Nice.
It's looking
I
nice.
do think that, like, looking at this, like KT and T1, not one of them winning would surprise me.
I wouldn't
actually
be
think-
surprised.
I would be surprised. I don't know which one's going to win, but I think one of them will
one
just
of those
win.
LCK teams could definitely win.
I mean, it's one of those things
Yeah,
where...
because
so
it's a best of 3 as well.
The
Yeah.
beauty of this, right, is there's a very strong and vocal LCK fan base on Reddit.
Mhm.
And so, like, a lot of them have been very vocal about, like, why do you keep underestimating
I actually
LCK?
think most of Reddit has switched to
Because of MSI.
LPL.
I mean,
Well, so, but this is the beauty, like,
it's
people
clear.
people use Worlds as, like, the LCK tournament, in that, like, you look at last year, they had 3 in the semifinals. Like, historically, LCK always gets all
But
of their teams
do you
out of
care
the group
more
stage.
about last year's Worlds or this year's MSI?
I mean, again, I am
I think,
more of the opinion. I mean,
MSI
like,
is the LPL
my
tournament.
take is this is going to sound really mean. People are going to flame me. I have eyes, and I look at the games, and I just think that LNG, BLG, and JDG just play better, is
Yeah.
my opinion.
And
you know
that
what
is
they
why
also-
And it's
Caps has never.
the ego on this.
Let's real. Okay, the only thing I wanted to say, okay,
And that's
was
all
that
we have time
all I
for this episode.
All I wanted to say was that at MSI, Caps didn't have a good tournament, and there was some skepticism coming into this tournament about whether or not he'd be able to perform. And then historically, there was an element about, like, Caps hadn't been that best against certain LCK top laners.
Thanks everyone for tuning
Yeah.
into this episode of the Divephoria
Caps is
State.
really good this tournament. Big Caps fan. G2 all the way. No, G2 number 1.
All right. Well, T1 and KT both have blue side. Blue side's been pretty good.
Wait,
so
do
that's
they?
why
Is that confirmed?
Yes, they do because they were drawn first. Drawn first, you get blue side.
Oh.
So
If you're the higher,
you
if
get
you're the
choice,
if you're the same
right?
seed,
you get blue side.
it's only if you're the same.
You
seed.
remember Pult from last year.
It's only if you're the same seed.
The year
But they
before.
are. Wait, KT's.
So
third
they
seeds.
KT's
KT's third
I
seed,
know, I
LNG
think
second
now-
seed.
LNG's third seed
Oh, you're right.
because they came through the regional gauntlet.
Yeah.
BLG
you're
got
right.
because of championship points.
You're
So
right, you're right,
BLG's
you're right.
second
My bad.
and KT's. So yeah, so then they went out on that.
Wait,
'cause-
does that mean NRG get side selection then?
no, because they're both. Well, yeah, energy,
they
yeah,
do.
because they got Drew
drawn-
first, and they're
drawn
both first seed.
Right.
I also think that
Energy
the,
is totally lucked out with that. By the
the
way,
one the seeding. So the draw thing only was true for the first round. So for based on your own regional seeding, that was only ever true for the first round.
no, I think that's true for every round.
But what if it changes?
That's what-
I-
but if you
that's what I
come
was
from
I'm
the
absolutely
Huh.
certain because energy. I even talked to them. They were saying this format is so advantageous for the first seeds because they're like, unless they fight
You
another
always
first seed,
get
they
side
just always
selection?
get blue side. Yep, through the whole thing. So if you're
Huh.
a first seed, unless you play another first seed, you always get side selection. So that's why. I mean, look, energy. So energy played. Who did they play first? I can't even remember. Why am I not seeing this?
LNG
was-
played C9.
it was Weibo.
Weibo.
But they got side selection for that. Then they got side selection against TL. They got side selection
Yeah,
against Mad.
NRG was blue in their first game against Weibo. I
Yeah.
remember. Yeah.
Mhm. So it is.
Wait, were they? No, they weren't. They
I
were
think
reds.
they picked red.
They were red.
But like this is, I literally talked to them and they said that was the way it was, and that's also what I was told for the rules.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but then
It
a lot of
is a
people
little
are
bit
trolling
weird
if
that
that's-
in the first, the DK KT best of one, that KT chose red side.
Well, it's showing them on this, but is this Swiss bracket even like
I'm
accurate?
pretty sure that they.
But
put
also,
it in
like,
that way.
the thing that confused me, shoutcasting, normally you have blue team on one side of the stage, red team on the other side of the stage.
Yeah.
And that started that way at the tournament, and then halfway, like, that didn't continue. The side of the stage that you were on was not representative of the side that you were on.
I think it's normally the team with side selection goes onto the the left side.
People who should know that or on the teams told me that that's the way it works. So
Okay.
it's definitely
We'll
Swiss.
get confirmation.
So it should be KT gets side selection, T1 doesn't get
Side selection. No, they would because they're both second seeds. If T1 got drawn first, they're both two seeds.
Oh right.
So then it goes to whoever's drawn first. So LCK definitely has the blue side diff.
Yep.
So actually, I take it back. LCK wins.
yeah, we'll find
I mean,
out
that-
if blue
that-
side
I
OP.
think
We'll
that
find
that's-
out. If those would be telling. People can start getting up in arms if those two series both go like 2-1 with all blue side wins.
Yeah.
you do also have to say that like JDG and LNG, like that was just blue side win the whole time, like the whole way through.
Yep.
So
it was.
it is I don't know. I think that when the teams get close enough in skill parity, that you do get
The meta also, as the
the
tournament
blue side
goes
situation.
on, starts having little twists.
Yeah.
So if the meta changes and twists, that can also affect how important the side selection is. So
And
Right.
also, teams are just more comfortable on certain sides. There's like, I mean, the T1 thing is a bit of a meme, right? But they've always been just better on blue side.
I also know there are several flavor counter picks that have not been pulled out yet
Yep.
by good teams that they're saving.
I'm still
Yeah.
waiting for Broken Blades, Kled, and Swain.
Hell
Kled is one of my
Seen
favorite
both
champs.
those before. Let me see a different one, please.
No, that was cool. We can see some Kled, but we have to wrap because
Yeah, we do.
our meeting
We gotta
started
go.
2 minutes ago.
Nice.
So
All
that
right.
does it for this episode of the.
Divephoria State. Thank you so much, everyone, for
And if you
joining
stay till
us.
the end, what comment do they need to leave?
Oh yeah, you need to leave that comment that we said at the very beginning of the show. If you remember, then you can put it down there.
If you
I
watch
don't
the
know.
dive,
What was it?
what are you called?
Oh,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
And if
yeah.
you watch Euphoria, you have to come up with your own name. Dino Dracus isn't here yet. He'll be here soon, and you guys.
and
can
he may
work
not
that
even
out.
want you to come up with a name, so we'll let him take control, right?
You can all be called the Vedius if you want. I like that.
Generous.
Works for me. That's mine.
Yeah, I think on that.
We'll make an
note-
executive decision for Dracos.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
All in favor?
Betty's, aka Capsators.
Yeah. No. Stop. No.
Just one more.
I've no.
See you all next week.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.